Boom! Spot the forced checkmate in 2 moves. Look at black's king tucked away in the corner on h8, protected by that little pawn shield. Seems safe, right? White's about to demolish that defense with pure tactical violence. White launches the knight from h4 straight into g6. Check! A complete sacrifice. The knight throws itself at the black king, and here's the beautiful part. Black has no choice. g8 is blocked by black's own rook, g7 is occupied by the pawn, and every other square is either controlled or blocked. There's only one legal move. The h7 pawn has to capture the knight on g6. And now, look what just happened. The entire h-file has been ripped wide open. Black's king is standing there completely exposed with nowhere to run. The white queen has a clear highway from g3 straight to h3. Queen slides to h3. Checkmate. The king can't escape. The queen controls the entire h-file. g8 is blocked by its own rook, and g7 by its own pawn. Complete annihilation. That's a textbook knight sacrifice, ripping apart the king's defensive structure and delivering checkmate in just 2 brutal moves. The knight clears the path, the queen delivers the final blow. That's how you finish a game with style. Black just played the pawn to h6, attacking white's knight on g5. What would you do? White has a crushing move. The rook slides from e4 to e6. This looks insane, offering up the rook, but there's a deadly point here. Look at h7. If black doesn't respond immediately, white's queen jumps there for checkmate. The queen would deliver mate on h7 because the black king on g8 has nowhere to run. Can black just capture the rook? Let's check. If the queen takes on e6, white still plays queen to h7, and that's checkmate. The black queen is no longer defending that crucial square. What about taking with the pawn? If the f-pawn captures on e6, again, queen to h7 is instant checkmate. So black has no choice but to eliminate the mate threat by capturing the knight. The h-pawn takes the knight on g5, removing the mating attack. But now comes the hammer blow. White plays rook takes queen on d6. Look at what just happened. White sacrificed a knight and a rook, but got them both back by winning the queen. That's a full queen advantage. Game over. This is called a deflection tactic. The black queen was trying to do too many jobs, defending h7 against checkmate and staying alive on d6. White exploited that overload brilliantly. When a piece is defending multiple things, sometimes you can force it to abandon one duty to handle another. White's king is under fire, but the counterattack is absolutely brutal. First, we eliminate the checking queen on the square e4 with our own queen. Black recaptures with the pawn, and while it looks like white might be in trouble, the trap is actually set. Notice how the white rook on the square f2 is perfectly lined up with the black rook on the square f8. To unleash this power, we just need to move our knight with a stunning discovered attack. The knight jumps to g6, checking the king on h8 while clearing the path for the rook to strike. If the king tries to step aside to the square g8, it is an immediate checkmate. The rook captures on f8, and the knight on g6 acts as the perfect anchor, defending the rook and cutting off any escape. Since the king is trapped, black is forced to capture the knight with the pawn instead. But now the floodgates are open for our kingside attack. We crash through the defense. White wins the exchange and leaves the enemy king completely exposed in the corner. In this high-speed blitz battle, this tactical sequence turned the game around instantly. White thinks they've trapped the knight, but they've actually just signed their own death warrant. By pushing the pawn to g4, white attacks the knight on h5, but completely ignores their own king's safety. Black strikes back instantly. The rook drops to the back rank with check. White has to be extremely careful here. If the king tries to tuck itself away in the corner, then it's an immediate lights out. The second rook swings over to f2. And that is a brutal checkmate. The king is suffocated by its own pieces and the coordination of the 2 black rooks. So, white is forced to step the king out into the open. But this is exactly where the trap snaps shut. Instead of saving the knight, it jumps forward into f4 with check. The knight hits the king and the completely unprotected rook on e6. This is a devastating fork that wins the game on the spot. White has to move the king to safety. And now black simply cleans up the material. Black has snatched a full rook and neutralized all of White's pressure, from a seemingly trapped knight to a crushing winning advantage in just 3 moves. White ignores a fork to deliver checkmate. Look at this insane position. White's got a bishop strangling Black all the way on f8. The queen's eyeing the king side from h3. But there's a massive problem. Black's knight is sitting on e1, and it's about to jump to f3 with check, forking the king and queen. White's about to lose the queen, right? Wrong. White slides the queen to h6, completely ignoring the threat, because now White's threatening checkmate on g7. The Black king has nowhere to run, and this changes everything. Black has no choice. They must deal with this checkmate threat, and there's only one way. The knight leaps to f3 with check. It's a desperate sacrifice, forking the king on g1 and the queen on h6. The king is in check and must move. But here's where it gets critical. The king has 4 legal squares, but only 1 wins. If the king goes to g2, Black checks again with the knight to h2, and after it returns to safety, White's attack fizzles out. The position's a mess and Black survives. And stepping to f1 is even worse. The king walks into a dark square where it's even less safe, and Black gets counterplay that saves the game. White steps to h1. This is the winning move. Only here does White's attack remain deadly. Now Black desperately tries to eliminate the dangerous bishop. The queen races from d8 to f8, capturing the bishop. Black just won a whole piece. But now comes the crusher. The knight from e4 jumps to f6 with check. It's another fork. Look at this knight. It's checking the king on g8 and attacking the queen on f8 at the same time. The king has no choice. It must shuffle to h8, the only legal square. And now for the finish. The queen swoops in from h6 to h7. Checkmate. The king on h8 is trapped. The knight on f6 protects the queen, controlling the g8 escape square, and g7 is blocked by Black's own pawn. The king has nowhere to go. A stunning mate in 4, where White sacrificed the queen's safety, allowed a check, found the only winning king move, and delivered checkmate with a beautiful knight fork. This is what it means to calculate forcing moves to the end. When you see mate, you don't worry about losing material. You just go for it.
White thought they were safe after capturing on g4, but they've just opened a highway to their own destruction. Black ignores the threat to their queen and strikes with a knockout blow. The bishop zooms down the long diagonal, putting the king in immediate danger. This move creates a lethal fork, but the real prize is the white king. The king is already trapped because the Black queen is perfectly placed to cut off the corner square on h1. If the king tries to escape to f1 immediately, the queen simply slides into the corner for a brutal mate. Game over. Since the king can't run, White must try to block the fire. White desperately throws the bishop in the way, but it's no use. Black crashes through, capturing the bishop and checking the king again. The king is forced into the corner at f1, the only legal square left on the board. And there it is. The queen delivers the final blow on h1. Checkmate. White's greed on the g-file allowed this stunning coordination between the bishop and queen to end the game in style.